Dear friend, there is a question that I've grumbled with for quite centuries, for quite a long time in my life. There is a question I have carried for a long time, and it refuses to remain silent. It is not an emotional question. It is not a religious one either. It is a rational question, one that demands intellectual honesty. And that is, why is an African journey to a sacred place abroad celebrated, but a journey to a sacred place at home condemned? When an African travels to Israel to pray at a wall, we call it a pilgrimage. It is dignified. It is applauded. It even comes with a title. When an African travels to Saudi Arabia to pray at a stone, it is called Hajj. Society rises in respect. No one asks whether the stone is dangerous. No one calls it superstition. Yet when the same African walks to a river or a stone tied to their own ancestry, the language shifts instantly. The respect disappears. The journey is no longer spiritual. It is labeled pagan. This difference in language is not innocent. Language reveals how we think. What we are witnessing here is not theology, it is conditioning. Let us pause and examine this carefully. Every civilization on earth has marked a certain place. Anthropologists agree on this. Historians document this. Psychologists explain this. Sacred spaces are not accidents. They are human responses to the memory, identity, and meaning. Long before modern religion existed, human beings across all continents associated spirituality with land. Europe built cathedrals on former sacred grounds. Asia tied spirituality to mountains and rivers. Indigenous cultures across America still recognize the land as holy. None of these are called demonic. They are called culture, heritage, or tradition. So why is Africa the exception? Africa, the exception. At some point, African spirituality was not merely ignored. It was actively refined as darkness, not examined, not studied, redefined. And once something is defined as evil, no evidence is required to dismiss it. Fear does the work. This is where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. A stone in Jerusalem is holy. A stone in Mecca is sacred. But a stone in Africa is suspicious. The question is not about stones. The question is about authority. Who decides what is sacred and whose sacredness is legitimate? I once shared quite calmly, and I preferred going to, in tradition in my land is called Got. That is now in a term is called the Mountain of Ramogi. That is found in Tororo. That is in Uganda. I preferred to go there for prayer. And when I shared this experience about me going to that particular place, the response was immediate. Accusation. In fact, no dialogue, no curiosity, but just judgment. Yet the same voice dreams passionately of praying at a wall in Israel. This is not hypocrisy in the moral sense. It is inconsistency in the intellectual sense. An inconsistency, when widespread, becomes a system. This is what I call the second phase of bondage. The first phase was physical, chains, borders, and control. The second phase is mental, where people are taught to distrust their own memory while revering the memory of others. This is not about rejecting Christianity or Islam. That is a misunderstanding of the argument. This is about critical balance. A mind that honors foreign symbols while fearing ancestral ones is not spiritually mature. It is psychologically dependent. African spirituality, when stripped of caricature, was never about evil forces. It was about order, community, moral responsibility, and continuity. It was about understanding life as interconnected between the living, the dead, and the yet unborn. These are philosophical ideas, not demonic one. The tragedy is not that Africans adopted global religions. The tragedy is that many adopted them without reflection at the cost of self-respect. A people cannot think freely if their past is permanently on trial, and a spirituality that demands the eraser of identity does not liberate. It replaces one center of authority with another. True faith does not fear questions. True spirituality does not require amnesia. To be proud of African spirituality is not to go backward. It is to stand upright. It is to say, we too had a way of naming the sacred. We too searched for meaning. We too encountered the divine in our own language or in our own languages. This is not nostalgia. It is clarity. This is not rebellion. It is reasoning. And this is not an attack on any faith. It is a defense of African dignity. On this channel, this is not a sermon. It is a thought experiment, inviting us to examine what we were taught, why we believed it, and whether it still makes sense. Because freedom does not begin with rejecting others. It begins with understanding ourselves. If this thought provoked your mind to go deeper into your own culture and to be grateful for your own culture, help me hit the button and share, comment, and subscribe so that we may discover more about ourselves, and then we learn to deconstruct our own mind.